Hi, my name's Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. Welcome along to another Technical Highlights webinar. During these webinars, I talk for about half an hour on some Comet topics. So there is a Comet webinar every fortnight. We alternate each fortnight. It will either be an introductory webinar for new users or a more in-depth one where I talk about new Comet features, best practice tips and IT industry news. We've been doing these for just over a year now, and overall we've been pretty reliable about keeping to this 2-week schedule. On the webinar platform, you can sign up for notifications about when we go live. And I'm coming to you live today. It's 9 a.m. here in New Zealand. So if you're viewing this live on our webinar platform, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a chat widget. Feel free to pop in any questions that you have. They'll be sent privately to me. And then at the end of my presentation, I have a few minutes to answer any questions. So anything that springs to mind, any clarifications, anything you want answered, just write it in and I'll do my best to answer it at the end. On alternate fortnights with a new user webinar, we've recently extended the way we do those to have a live Q&A there too. So if you have any questions that might be better suited to a first time sort of questions, then feel free to join one of those webinars as well. And listening to other people's questions can always be really eye-opening in terms of the unexpected things that you can learn as well. We are aiming for a half-hour presentation only, with some time at the end for questions. I know all our Comet partners, IT companies, MSPs, service providers, you're really busy people. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to catch up on the latest Comet Backup news with me, so I won't waste any time. After the live presentation, this webinar may be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and you can also watch a replay on the webinar platform. Can't take live questions on YouTube, but we can take questions at any time via the support ticket system, by email, or by booking in a phone call, so just reach out. So I do these every 4 weeks, and last time I talked about lots of major new changes that we had made in Comet. I talked about full disk access for macOS, the new pop-up dialog to drag and drop the permission over, as well as a new fix to preserve the permission through a software upgrade. I also talked about the ability to prevent creating shortcuts on the desktop in the start menu when you're doing a silent install on Windows. There's a new feature to run custom commands immediately after taking a disk snapshot. And so if you've got some certain database software, it can reduce and you need to back it up using commands instead of any built-in protected item type. This can reduce the downtime. There's also, I talked about improved email reporting for financial reports inside your cometbackup.com dashboard. And more. I also talked about network time sync when booting the USB recovery media. I talked about improved default selections for flash drives and for SFTP. And I also talked about the new PaxTar format for more accurate preserving of file metadata in tar files. So that was last month. And if you're interested in learning anything more about these topics, the previous webinar is available to watch again here on this platform, and it may be uploaded to YouTube in the future. So that was last month. As for this month's webinar, there's been a lot of exciting new development in the Voyager series that I can tell you about. So I hope you've got a coffee and let's get stuck into it. When you go through the setup wizard in Comet Server, one of the branding options is to change the icon that's used for the software. This had to be an ICO format for Windows and ICNS format for macOS. And the reason for that is these are the standard icon file formats. On macOS and Windows respectively, and they're the standard formats because they support resolution independence. An ICO file is actually a container full of multiple images, all at different sizes, so that you can show a small icon in the system tray and a large icon in the start menu or when you zoom in Explorer. You're thinking, shouldn't it be fine just to have one single large image and resize it for all sizes? And in the past, looking back at the Windows 95 days, it was partly about performance. Your PC didn't have to spend all its poor little Pentium CPU on resizing images just to load the start menu. If the ICO file contains a small resource, it can just render it directly. And of course, nowadays the CPU can resize an image in under a millisecond, so who cares? But there are still other important reasons to do this. When you look at the application icon in the system tray or in the top bar, the application title bar, you're seeing 16 by 16 pixels. A lot of detail is lost at these small sizes, and you may actually want to redesign your logo to better suit the small sizes, to simplify some of the detail, things like that. You might not notice this unless it's pointed out to you, but actually a lot of software changes their icon in subtle ways for the small sizes. Anyways, for the icon field branding in Comet, we only supported ICO and ICNS for these reasons. It's been like this for years, and over the years we got a lot of support queries from people having trouble with this setting. And people would take their logo image PNG and just rename it to ICO, upload it here, and then get surprised when it failed to generate the software. We added some explanation into the documentation that no, you can't just rename a file because it's a container of multiple images. You actually have to use a conversion program to convert into ICO file format. And we listed a lot of good free software options for doing that conversion, but it seems like we still had an ongoing trickle of people running into problems with this. So we've just taken the leap and implemented a full ICO, ICNS conversion tool into Comet. So that's it. Now you can upload a JPEG or a PNG, and Comet will detect that and automatically convert it for you. It means you can take your random logo image and it'll make it in there. It might not look great. Like I said, you still want to consider having a simpler, small variant of your logo and think about the different contexts and make sure it's a square and transparent and all of that. But this is going to make Comet just work in more situations. I was looking through our changelogs over the last month for things to talk about today, and one of the things I saw was a lot of performance enhancements. We all love performance enhancements. We're constantly making small improvements piece by piece, but if you compare Comet today to a year prior, you'll see a lot of small changes do add up. Just in the last 2 weeks, in the 2910 and 2911 releases, there were 6 separate performance enhancements. Increased static asset compression. You've all heard of zip files. If you've ever used 7-zip or WinRAR to make a zip file, you know there's an option in the settings to compress faster or harder. You have the choice between making your zip file quickly or making it compress harder for a smaller overall file size. As well as zip files, there's also gzip using the same deflate algorithm. Do you know when you browse to a website, most of the HTML that comes back to your browser is compressed with gzip? And when you're browsing the Comet server web interface and you go to view a really long job report or something that's dynamic, we gzip it on the fly, on demand. And there's a trade-off there because we have to choose between compressing faster, which will save your Comet server's CPU load, but it's going to result in more data that'll take longer to transfer, or we could compress harder, which takes the Comet server more CPU time, but maybe it could be made up with transferring less data. It's a hard problem to solve. Depends on a lot of factors. We just guess somewhere in the middle. But for things that are static, not dynamic. So that's for the Comet server web interface's own HTML and JavaScript code for when it loads up. That also comes down to your browser compress. But because this is static, this is code that we develop internally and then it's fixed for that whole Comet server release version. It's not changing. In this case, we can spend a bit more time to compress that harder and make the file sizes smaller so the web interface loads faster. And we turn the settings way up. For the default gzip, there's a good 10% improvement. But actually, if you're using any browser from the last 5 years, they support an even stronger zip format than gzip called Brotli. And this thing is about 40% smaller file size. So that could translate to a 40% faster page load time for the web interface. Page load time. Comet server loads pretty quickly, doesn't it? I don't mean to brag, but our workplace has a really good internet connection and I've got a great one at home and my Comet server is about 1 millisecond ping away from me. So I see very fast loads. That's a best case scenario, but it's not always like that. I've helped some customers who have their one end of the Ethernet cables in South Africa and the other ends in, a cloud in the USA, and page load time can be a real problem. So faster page loads through better compression. Heaps more little tricks like that. There's heaps of them, so I'll just skim through them. Performance improvements for loading very large job reports and buckets and the connected devices pages. So this is in the Comet server web interface, and once again, this is dynamic content. And this was about how fast Chrome or Firefox can handle processing this data when it comes in. Comet was processing this data piece by piece, and it turns out that not doing it all at once gives a lot of real-world speed-ups on loading these pages. The job report page in particular has had some other enhancements too. The job report page now supports multiple pages, the quick filter search, being able to export the job report lines as CSV and Excel files, just like all the other tables. So if you've got a job report with 1 million error lines in it and you're searching for just the right one, then a fast loading page and being able to use our quick filter is much faster than waiting for a massive page to load and then lagging through a big Control F page search. Reducing the per directory restore overhead. So if you're restoring a job that's got a lot of folders in it, you might notice in recent versions of Comet, CPU usage goes down a bit. In particular, if you have Spectre mitigations in your kernel, there are fewer syscalls needing kernel transitions. But probably the disk or the network is still the bottleneck, so this won't really affect the overall job time. Comet faster chunk split detection. So this is some SIMD optimizations to our chunker. Once again, this should slightly reduce CPU usage during a backup job if the chunker is involved. So that's when you have new files or changed files. Faster web interface restore startup. So Comet has a lot of subtle signals that provide information without being too technical. You've probably never noticed this, but when you go to run a restore job, there's a line in the job report that says, finding files to restore, please wait. There's actually 2 versions of that log message. One says, please wait, and one doesn't. And if you start a restore from the desktop app, we have a bit more information already available, and there's no need to do some certain types of calculation. So the startup time is slightly faster on desktop. What we've done here is optimize the restore startup time for jobs started from the web. It still says please wait, but it should cut down the startup time a lot, especially if you are just restoring a few files out of a much larger backup job. You should expect faster startup for those restore jobs started by the web interface. Performance improvements for a large number of B2 buckets. So Comet has supported Backblaze B2 for a long time. They've been a great partner to us, and especially since we launched direct bucket requesting support for Backblaze B2, there's been great uptake with this partner. One thing we noticed was a small slowdown if you have more than a few thousand buckets in Backblaze B2, because Comet was checking each bucket, and that's been changed now, so Comet can go more directly to the right bucket straight away, just making Comet a little bit faster to use with large Backblaze accounts. So that's 6 nice performance enhancements, all just in the last few weeks. They're all small individually, but they do add up to creating a nicer overall experience. And like I said, we are constantly improving Comet and adding more performance and new features. So I do recommend staying up to date wherever possible. Open a new tab. Here's my confession. I am a tab hoarder. I'm one of those people with 200 tabs open on my work PC. And try as I might, I just can't close them. They're all things I just need to get back to, and I'll just get back to them soon, and then suddenly I've got 300 open. So that's my problem. But Comet Server Web Interface is what's called a single page app, and you were stuck in just the one tab. And there's been a lot of times I've wanted to open up 2 job reports side by side, or 2 user accounts side by side, 2 policies side by side, and Comet Server didn't really let you just open a new tab. You could do it manually, you could log in again, but what kind of crazy workaround is that? It should be possible to just open a new tab, and now it does. So there's a few different parts building up to this. First is that web sessions are now persistent. If you look in your storage folder or inside a Comet Server self-backup archive, there's a new Comet sessions.db3 file, and this means you can actually restart the Comet Server for a settings change, or even reboot the Comet Server PC entirely, and all the admin users will stay logged in. Being able to stay logged in means that your login session is stored and recorded, and this happens even across tabs. So when you open a new tab, it builds in your persistent session. You're logged in and ready to go. And then the final piece, just connecting these 2 bits together, was just allowing it on the links. Changing all the buttons and links to support middle click or right click, open a new tab. Game changer. I'm sorry everyone, we didn't have this years ago, but hey, multiple tab support. It's here now in Comet Server in the latest 29.11 Voyager versions. Just don't get into a bad habit of opening 200 tabs like I do. A few quick updates on the USB recovery media feature. We added a run dialog. I use the run dialog a lot in Windows. However you get to it, whether you use WinR hotkey or if you go start run, WinX and run, right click the start and then run. It's just something you use all the time, and I've recently been spending a lot of time inside the USB recovery media, and I just keep going to use it and it's not there, so we've added it. From the tools menu at the top of the screen, there's now a run command, and we've made it look and feel just the same as the normal Windows one. Show all drives checkbox. So the USB recovery media builder in WinRE mode is really, it's assuming that you've got a flash drive and you're plugging a little flash drive from one computer to another. Maybe you keep a flash drive on your keychain as you go out to visit a customer's site, something like that. It's, it's a cheap device, common to have around, easy to boot from. And so Comet's desktop interface is looking for flash drives, but if you've only got a full-size USB hard drive on your desk, it should be possible to show that too, but it wouldn't show up in the wizard. Even though it's USB, the reason to do that is with whether Windows detects a drive as being a fixed drive or a removable drive. And, well, should still be possible to create the USB recovery media and boot from it. So now there's this extra checkbox at the bottom to show all drives. And if you know what you're doing, you can pick another drive on the PC. Just be aware this really does show all drives, including internal hard drives, so be a bit careful. Don't pick your C drive because it would get formatted. Custom files and commands. So when you go to create the USB recovery media, one of the options is to slipstream custom drivers into the media. This is something I talked a bit more about in my previous presentation about supporting drivers in the INF file format. And INF is the standard driver description format on Windows, and this is good enough for pretty much everyone. But we did have a number of requests for people who that isn't enough for, and they really need to run the full driver installer exe file or something like this. And so we've just added a lot more options in here. You can now select extra files and folders that will be copied to the boot environment. And then you add a custom command to run your installer. So when you're booted into this thing, any custom files and directories you add get copied into the X drive/custom path. And this is all in the documentation. It's all in docs. And so your command should be something like xdrive/custom/myinstaller.exe. So this is just a nice way of being able to get those last few drivers installed. We've talked to multiple people using this feature. It's really versatile. Someone wanted to have it so the media would install their VPN software and automatically connect to their VPN when they boot the flash drive, which is a really cool use case. Things like that. The last thing I want to cover today is our upcoming software release, Comet 20.11 IO. You know the drill. We do this every 3 months. We take a snapshot of our weekly Voyager release branch and roll it up into something that's long-term supported. And it's been about 3 months since we released our last quarterly release, 20.8 Jupiter. Time really flies. We're just putting the finishing touches on 20.11 IO, and it will be released later this week, perhaps early next week. The name comes from one of Jupiter's moons. We name all Comet quarterly releases after solar system objects as the Voyager spacecraft travels by them on its journey. You know, we started in the inner solar system 4 years ago with Comet 17.2 Mercury. It's just continued outwards from there. Every 3 months, you have sort of a brand new opportunity to step off the weekly Voyager ride and settle down for a bit with the quarterly release series. Last quarter, it was 20.8 Jupiter, and moving right along 3 months, 3-point version numbers in our year.month naming scheme, you get 20.11 IO. Jupiter's got a lot of moons. It's got 79 moons. Not counting, it's also got moonlets. Io is one of the famous Galilean moons, the first 4 moons of Jupiter that were discovered back in the 1600s. Some more quick fun facts about Io. It looks like this. It's about the same size as Earth's moon. It's covered in volcanoes. It's got a thin atmosphere made mostly out of sulfur dioxide. And sulfur plus volcanoes is how you get some of these really vibrant colors. You know the aurora borealis, like the northern lights? On Earth, auroras appear at the extreme north and south, but on Io, they are brightest around the equator. And in terms of actual software features, IO rolls up everything from the 20.9 Voyager series. So comparing that back to the previous 20.8 Jupiter quarterly release, we're talking about the brand new USB recovery environment, GUI, organization support for token software installations, the new ability to hide branding of individual storage vaults, permission prompts for full disk access on macOS, like I was talking about earlier, Thor commands, and everything else I've talked about today too, like the automatic ICO files, open a new tab. So please check out IO when it's released. Upgrade your servers. We'll push the upgrade out to Comet Go shortly as well. We'll get everyone to enjoy the latest and greatest that Comet has to offer. Software upgrades are always free, and we keep all our old software versions available for download on our website. So if you click old versions, that's always an option if you need it for anything.